wondered what's going on in the world that we cannot see. So, in other words, what's happening on the surfaces of things like a bottle of water, a cup or a beaker, and on the buttons that we press on our remote control. In this episode of Sci-sphere, I want to show you a whole world of microorganisms that are living and growing on these everyday objects, to show you the world and the ecosystems that we cannot see. So the surface that I have chosen to use, the tips of my fingers, because my fingers and my hands touch so many objects throughout the day. For example, my phone, coins, beakers, remote controls, all transferring bacteria to the tips of my fingers. Now, I'm not going to use a powerful microscope to see what's on my hands. I'm going to grow them on an agar plate. So here's an agar plate with a lid and a bottom. And on the bottom, you can see here, there's a yellow substance. This is agar jelly, and this contains lots of nutrients to encourage the microorganisms to grow. So let's see what we find on the tips of my fingers. So here's a stack of my agar plates. I'm going to just take the first one off the top for my experiment. And I'm going to make the experiment a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to do the first one, as I said, with my fingers on the plate without washing my hands. And I'm going to compare that to two more. One after my hands have been washed in just regular hand soap. And the other one after washing my hands with hand sanitizer, with the main ingredient being ethanol. So the experiment's really easy. I put my plate down with the base at the bottom, agar at the bottom. I lift the lid up slightly, hold the tips of my fingers on the agar for about 5 seconds, and then replace the lid. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good. And now it's important that I seal the lid in case anyone knocks the lid off, and then we just don't want the bacteria growing or getting out anywhere that we don't want it. So just quickly with tape. Whoops. There we go. And I'm going to repeat the procedure, but with different plates labelled, one with soap, one with hand sanitizer. Leave them for 2 days, and then we'll come back and find out what has grown on the surface of my fingers, and to see how effective soap and hand sanitizer is at removing microorganisms such as fungi and bacteria. So see you in a couple of days. All right, the results are in. So I left mine to grow for 3 days, but only because a weekend got in the way. If you ever do this experiment, you'll have results after 2 days. If you do ever get a chance to do this experiment, there's 2 things you've got to remember though. Incubate them at normal room temperature. Don't go any higher, particularly when you've taken samples from the human body, because you never know what kind of things you're going to grow. Secondly, incubate the plates upside down, because the condensation that the microorganisms will form will run onto the agar and swish them around. So if you end up with bacteria, you don't see the colonies. And if you end up with fungi, you really won't see them make their fungal hyphae. Okay, let's do it. Let's have a look at what's grown from my hands. All right, so the first set of results is one from me and one from my colleague. We simply put our fingers on the agar plates, just like I showed you earlier in the video, without washing our hands. And as you can see on mine, I have got many pale cream and pale yellow bacterial colonies that have grown, and you can see where all three of my fingers have been. On my colleague, interestingly enough, also with some bacteria colonies, but each finger has grown a large fungus, and you can see the network of hyphae, which is like a fluffy white substance. Inside the center, there's a dark, I believe, also fungi. And I don't know if the camera can pick this up yet. I'll show pictures at the end. A couple of red colonies of bacteria have also emerged there. Then we washed our hands very thoroughly in soap. So let's just bring those in. Okay, switch them around so it keeps it consistent. Then we have mine again. I'm number 2. And you can see the huge reduction between what I had before and after washing my hands. So you can still see my 3 fingers, but the colonies, there are fewer of them and they're much, much, much smaller. And my colleague on the other plate, no fungi anymore, just bacteria. And again, making a comparison, there's a huge reduction in microbial growth from the fingers. Then finally, we rinsed our hands in disinfectant later on. And this one is pretty impressive. The disinfectant we used was really, really effective. So mine has got 0 microbial growth on it at all. Nothing appeared. And my colleague has reduced to virtually just a couple of colonies here. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 colonies on one finger and 1 smudge of a colony on the other finger. So as you can see, a massive reduction. The conclusion we bring from this is with the soap and the sanitizer we used, the sanitizer was more effective than the soap. But I think it's safe to say both of them are best to use, either soap or hand sanitizer, to reduce the amount of microorganisms that grow on your hands, particularly before you're about to eat something. Now, at the end of the video, I'm just going to do a quick summary of all of these results in a picture. Just a quick recap. These are the first 2 agar plates that were created by dipping our fingertips onto the agar for 5 seconds, leaving them for 3 days to grow. And as you can see, there is a mixture of bacterial colonies that are pale cream, pale yellow, plus very fluffy fungi on my colleague's fingers that has no washing number 1 on the label. Then we have the 2 plates that have grown microorganisms on after we've washed our hands in soap. And here there is a clear reduction in the amount of things living on our hands. Finally, after using an ethanol-based hand sanitizer, nothing grown on one plate and very little grown on the other. So the conclusion for this experiment is that the hand sanitizer in this case worked the best. Obviously, it depends on the brands that you use and how long you spend washing your hands. So there you go, a whole other world that is growing on the tips of your fingers. It's amazing what's there that you cannot see. Now, just one last tip if you do this experiment. Always dump the agar plates that have been used, once you've taken your photographs, into a biohazard bag. Tie a knot and then dispose of in an autoclave to destroy them, because you don't want anything nasty getting out of those plates and making people sick. So there you go, a whole of the world on the tips of your fingers, grown on an agar plate.